near future, because I think that would be one of the most dynamic events on the planet. So
I have something to report about that as well.
Okay.
That might be interesting and open that up.
Cool. Okay, let me make sure we're live. Yeah, we're good. We're good. Everybody, give me a thumbs up if you can see us and hear us, and if I get Bear's
and
feedback.
There's your 10 seconds of echo, Michael.
Hey, that's my test. That's my test to make sure we're live. And okay, guys, I'm going to fire this up, and we've got Mitch on with us, back with us on Alfacast. Very exciting. One of our favorite shows in terms of response. So this is great. I'm going to hit record and fire her up. Here we go.
Mike, I'm going to switch modems here. I'll disappear for 10 seconds.
Okay, you won't hear my my beautiful opening.
Well, actually, I'll
praising you. Here we go. And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with the powerful, intrepid Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live from the Smith River in the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still reigns supreme. We are wrapping up harvest. The final leaves are drying. I know, Bear, it's been a delayed and longer harvest than normal due to the weird weather, which we'll be talking about today with Mitch. But that is slowly wrapping up as we move into fall and into winter, which we were talking about. We're looking forward to, because we're going to be diving into more creative pursuits inside with video content and media for the new platform that's launching. So every season brings a full bounty of opportunity here at Alfa Vedic Gardens. Yeah. It's really great. Truly amazing.
And I kind of take care of things on the ground here. I'm the ditch digger of the AV crew, so I'm usually out in the dirt somewhere. But Mark Iver is on our farm right now doing his amazing magic. Mike, you won't believe what he just created for us for our little business center. And we're also planning all the landscaping around it, which is going to be a little glamping unit also for, woofer or just guests that want to come, and want to camp and jump in the river in the summer. And there's going to be, we'll be able to double the Jaugulan production in back of it. And anyway, pretty cool. It's going to, and then we'll finish the pond, which is right adjacent to it. So a lot of cool things happening. You won't recognize that little zone 2 of the AV farm next time you're here for the mushroom festival, if not sooner.
Yeah. So I need to get up there maybe tomorrow or the weekend to grab a couple teas for Music and Sky and take some video of the after, because I took before when Mark was just starting. So I think that would be a nice video to grab. Also, you teased the mushroom workshop. We do have a mushroom workshop coming soon, the weekend after Music and Sky. We have posted that on our Patreon. If you are interested in actually coming to the farm and learning how to inoculate logs and also grow mushrooms in your food forest, this is going to be a fantastic single-day workshop event. If you can't be there, which I know is difficult to make your way up here, we will be recording that and offering that on our platform. So this is the type of content that will be available soon on alfavedic.com for the membership platform. So that's very exciting. Check out our patreon.com/alfavedic for that, which soon won't be around once the new platform launches. And then finally, 2 more points of business. The Way Forward online summit is this weekend. Our great friend Alex Zeck has been putting his heart, soul, and everything into this. I will be on there Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific time talking about decentralized solutions, creating the new internet, and why we shouldn't use fiat blood money. And lots of amazing people on there, and that's free. So check out, I posted that on our Telegram, the alfavedic.com/the way forward. Amanda Volmer on there. So many of our Alfa Vedic guests are on there. And so, yeah, check that out. And then finally, Music and Sky is 7 days away. We just added a couple more tents. If you're looking to come and didn't want to camp, there's some more tents available. And the schedule dropped late last night. So you can go check out the schedule and see all the fun activities happening at Music and Sky. That's next week. So grab your tickets now. That's all I got, Bear. Anything else?
No, let's go for it.
Okay, here we go. This is going to be a very, very fun talk today. Greeting the grid with the intrepid Mitch the Orgone Donor. He's returning to Alfacast to share his success with orgone technology to neutralize the nefarious efforts of those who would attempt to turn the elements of creation against mankind. Our favorite atmospheric warrior, the intrepid Mitchell Joseph, aka Mitch the Orgone Donor, returns to Alfacast again. He's been busy since we last talked, so prepare to be dazzled by what he will share. Quote, I've dedicated my life to creating and gifting thousands of orgone energy devices to the planet in an effort to help raise humanity's consciousness and end the planetary geoengineering agenda. Are Mitch's efforts actually regreening the deserts of Arizona and mitigating weather modification efforts to manufacture drought and floods while neutralizing chemtrail contaminants? We've done our own orgone research, witnessed the evidence, and had a few experiences of our own, so convincing us wasn't a hard sell. Perhaps the most grave issue facing every life form within our realm is weather weaponization, coupled with the atmospheric aerosoling of noxious synthetics and the overlay of microwave grids affecting our very consciousness. We needn't sit back as hapless victims, and Mitch will reveal the technologies now critical to employ in every community worldwide. Quote, as a consciousness-driven science nerd, I'm fascinated by the work of the late Wilhelm Reich, the man credited with discovering the life force energy of the universe, which he coined as orgone. Mitch gives his research and the devices freely in what he refers to as his matrix job. He does so from the kindness of his heart and personal resources to see the end to geoengineering, purposeful consciousness suppression, and the predatory practices of illegitimate authorities. Mitch has been so kind to gift the entire all the attendees at Music and Sky with orgone. So every person coming to Music and Sky will be receiving a gift bag with some orgone devices gifted from Mitch with the plan. And we'll talk a bit about this on today's show, for us to be busting towers and digging holes, dropping earth pipes throughout the Central Valley of California as we leave Music and Sky. And also we will be doing daily gifting sessions and missions around that entire valley where the event's happening. So awesome. Doing God's work, Dr. Bear Lando. It's going to be a fun one today with Mitch.
Absolutely. I've been stoked to see you again, my friend. Thanks for being with us. There's a lot I know we want to talk about here. And most of all, we want to hear about your adventures, and your successes. And also, I think we're going to open up the conversation. You were mentioning just about the whole climate change agenda in the first place and what that's all about. And, you have some real solutions. I'd like to just, if you don't mind, take a minute and create a little bit of a wider context for what orgone technology is. What we have to understand, it's a living technology. And unlike these things that we're talking through right now that are using dirty energy and just allowing us interface, which is great, but albeit on a very crude level, living technologies really utilize those more refined levels of the ether, we'll say that. And these living technologies also require that we attune our consciousness with the technology. A good example of that is like with biogeometry, which is gaining notice now for good reason. And it really requires that as a practitioner, you're using a very science-based technology, but then you as a practitioner also have to be able to attune to that level of consciousness. And then you become an interface. You're not, so-called a detached observer like our fake science likes to believe is even possible in the first place. So, with that, my whole point of this is that bringing up that orgone technology, just like biogeometry, it also carries your intentions because you're interfacing with a living, intelligent consciousness. We'll loosely call it the ether or the orgone. I think they're synonymous, but you can tell me any different. And those intentions then are amplified when we are tuning in with this technology. And in the case of orgone technology, we're creating the very atmosphere of our realm. And, out here in the farm, in medicine, I've learned in both that there are elementals that are the little worker bees, within our body, within the soil. And doesn't it make sense that those same elementals exist on these other levels, the more refined levels of the ether? And in fact, for centuries, every culture since, beginning has always acknowledged these. And there was a time where people would interface and visualize these and things when people were more tapped into that level of reality. So here's the point with that. There are elementals in the atmosphere. They even had names for them in different cultures, the fire element, the air element, the water element. They had different elementals that worked on all of those different planes that, their work allowed the ethers to precipitate matter and what we think of as physicality. So when we have some demons on this plane that are deliberately up their spring stuff, using frequencies to manipulate weather, to weaponize the weather against mankind and so forth, they are also affecting these elementals. Now, these elementals, again, are sentient beings working on behalf of us. Now, we create chaos within that realm when we do that. We also kind of piss them off in a way, and they don't always serve us like, the original plan intended. So when we start using these living technologies like orgone, then with our intentions, acknowledging these elementals to free them from this filth that a tiny portion of mankind has created, and also acknowledge them in that, then they will flock to us, love us tremendously, and serve us and manifest that exponentially quicker what we're trying to achieve as far as just cleaning up all this other stuff, but also exponentially, expedite the manifestation of what we do want to see on this plane. So thanks for just allowing me to say that, because this goes so much deeper than I think most people understand. Mitch and Mike, I know you guys understand this. So what we're here to hear about is Mitch, your all your adventures. So take it away wherever you'd like to start.
All right, guys. Well, I know we did the quick formality of, thank yous and all that, but I will say again quickly, thank you so much for bringing me back. It's been 1 year since we last talked, and it has been busy to say the least. I want to coattail off something you just said, Bear, about like I had this analogy in the case of like with the elementals. We're all on information overload these days. We're playing catch up to suppressed information and finding out who we are and reality. What are we? Where are we? Why are we? And so we all have different names for things, but like we all have these cohesive themes. And I think that the themes are related to or center around essentially life or death. I believe, my personal belief, based on the work I've done with Orgonite and Orgone, the tower busting and things, is that I think we live in a realm that is based on life, that is being overshadowed, or something nefarious is attempting to create a frequency or a reality that is based on death, or based on basically anti-life. I would call AI anti-life. I would call, people hear me talk about parasites. The reason we call them parasites, at least in the orgone arena or spectrum, is that there is something feeding that it can't, basically there's something that we don't need in order to exist, but something needs us in order to exist. And that thing that needs us, it must feed on something, but it can't feed on life. It can't feed on truth. And so that's where you get into this overshadowed, what I call the matrix, which, Mike, I will say too, I think one thing I think I should reword how I do my bio, because I have my matrix job, which is actually like a lot of other people. It's like I work something, I do something that has nothing to do. People would never know what I do for a living, or for my matrix participation tokens. But then this is my matrix responsibility. So this is like, we live in a world based on life, a life energy. And I am, I've got this basically fire in my soul that it pisses me off, but it makes, and it's like some people could say, oh, well, you're negative and you're thinking, you live in this reality, you're trapped, you're a prisoner. I don't. That's why I do what I do. And so with everything I've been doing specifically here in Arizona has led me to what I just did now. Mike, we were saying, there's a whole lot of orgonite on its way to California as we speak. And, probably one of the biggest projects and biggest thing, I mean, it's been an endeavor to complete everything. So we're currently seeing all kinds of improvements, even from last year. When we spoke, I just gotten back from a gifting trip in Idaho, tower busting trip in Idaho, where we were drawing lines of earth pipes up to what we basically went to Coeur d'Alene and then looped around Idaho, back down through Utah, over to Las Vegas, and then back to Arizona. But even last year, we celebrated, I think, our second wettest monsoon season on record. We had a second spring. We never had a fall. Even this year, last year and this year, really very limited fires. This year, they always try. They're never going to stop trying, what I call the government arsonists. But it's everything around here is like lively and green and revitalized. And now they're saying, which we'll talk about today, that the climate hoax that I call it a hoax. I want people to be able to pinpoint, like, what is it they're doing to seed these ideas that something exists when it really doesn't, and what is reality. Get out there and actually see, because reality does not represent what we're told it is. And that's one of the things you can test specifically doing this type of work, because we just had, they refuse to say this is the wettest monsoon season on record, but the news is saying that most of Arizona has now received more rainfall than monsoon season 2021. Well, what comes after second place? I don't know, so they'll do anything they can to avoid telling the truth about what's really going on. And that's where I'm there to put a wrench in the gear. So.
You're muted, Bear.
No, fantastic. And as we were saying before we went live, the media, of course, if it wasn't for them, there wouldn't be any deceit at all. And we would realize that the majority of people actually are in alignment with, what we're talking about here today, and not at all believing the hoax, the narrative to, cast or shade on people that believe differently.
Mm-hmm. Well, last year after we spoke, I dabbled in a few podcasts before that, but for about the first 4 years I was doing this, I was kind of just talking to a brick wall and a very small Instagram following. And after I was on your show, I couldn't keep up with my emails at that point. It was sad, but in a good way, positive sad, but it was really just the amount of people that took an interest and realized, like, oh, there's something I can do. Or they'd hear, like, oh, Mitch, well, I knew about orgonite. I've heard about it for years, but all they'd ever heard about it was that it, get a pretty pyramid at the crystal shop in Sedona and put it in your juju space. And it's like, no, there is a much bigger component to this, especially when you're producing these tools in what I would call the proper manner, because there is potential that you can, essentially I don't like to use the word manipulate, but you are definitely adjusting the elements that have been manipulated. You're turning something back on that's been turned off. You're finding the anti to what has already become the anti in this place. And so when that took off, the number of people that I saw gifting, the number of people who contacted me here in where I'm in Sedona, I've accomplished what I've accomplished because of the help of a lot of people. I want to be very clear about that, because there's no way one person can gift an entire state and every tower. There are millions of towers in just this state alone. And it is essentially carried over into really every electromagnetic, I call them weapons, but every tool from the tower down to the phone that's in the pocket. And so it's just creating the web. We create what I call the frequency fence for the playground that is tapping into and out of the ether. And like you had said with equating ether and orgone, that's kind of pretty much what I equate it to. But I always leave that room because like the amount of information since I've spoken with you guys last year, there's so many things that have come and gone along the way that, you're like, I'll just use a quick example. I won't go into too deep, but like I saw Jason Brashears on your show and it actually made me reevaluate as I dove into that spectrum, in a positive way. But I had to reevaluate the work I did, and it really threw me for a lot of loops. Now I've kind of brought it back in, and actually now I have even more purpose to what I've been doing. So I'm in the same way with the music and sky. I mean, a quarter ton of it's literally a quarter ton, and I've weighed it. A quarter ton of orgonite is going to music and sky, and in smaller increments, like smaller boxes, I have been for the last 2 years now. I will communicate with different people around Arizona. I build these friendships and whatever. I get together with different groups who have, their point persons for things like there's some group called Compass, Arizonans for Safe Tech, and then people that are under the radar on any part of that spectrum. And I will send them these things. I gift them these boxes and boxes and boxes of earth pipes and tower busters. And the intention is, you can quickly cover a lot of ground if say 30 people who all want to participate, and you just give them all the stuff. And it's like, I want you to take this home, bury this in your yard, put this around your smart meter or somewhere in the center of your home. And like, you can cover a lot of ground just going neighborhood by neighborhood and ticking things off your checklist. And that is exactly what I've been doing, trying to, as best I can, trying to formulate an organized like list of to-dos, because it's very overwhelming. It's a lot of work. And like when I started doing this in Chicago back in like late 15, early 2016, it was a lot easier to see results right away because that's just a microwave bubble, really. In Sedona, I have only one tower anywhere near where I am. But so it's like seeing the changes you're looking for. That's what you want to use. You want to document, you want to share with other people, and then get them on board. That's actually what prompted me when I mentioned, unfortunately I couldn't attend the event, but I'm like, I sure as hell will be doing something. So it was like, let's do something where, 400 to 500 people can all dabble and play, and the changes I'm expecting based on what I've mapped out with everything else in this project, I expect to see enough of a shift that's positive. The things I talk about that are going on here, I expect to see enough of a shift that's going to encourage more of those people that may not have been encouraged or really interested, and that, show them the receipts kind of thing. So around here, that's my method of madness. Some people would say I'm insane because this stuff, people don't know it comes out of my pocket, or if they don't, which is why it always baffles me when certain people like out of the blue they'll just ask for stuff, and I'm like, well, you wouldn't ask your friend for $20, would you? Maybe you would. But it's just the idea that like, no, I'm trying to do a cohesive project, cover a significant amount of land, focusing on like water sources. That's a big one around here. Focusing on the Phoenix and Tucson area, the two largest not nuclear, but largest microwaves, I'd call them, with all kinds of occult symbolism. And I mean, Phoenix being a Masonic city, it's very connected to all of this like frequency web. So, we have a rhyme and a reason, or, I have a rhyme and a reason for the method of how I gift, going against the jet stream, opening it up. And we've seen the results in the form of these major improvements where if I do watch the TV, I'm just like, what in the world are these idiots talking about? Nothing they say on this screen, at least as far as I can see, is true. And what I hear from these other people that's really encouraging is when they have their experience, and we can talk about it, those people, a lot of people, even from your own demographic or your group, have reached out to me. They went to prove it wrong like I did. They were pleasantly surprised, and they had really cool results. And so, it's just, it's one of those things you have to do. And so this is my way of like shoehorning it into everybody's life to basically like position them so they can go try to prove it wrong and be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. And what better way to spread the truth is, show people, not just try to teach them.
Exactly.
And let them have their own experience. And you've been incredibly generous. And I know it's fueled by, a passion to really make a difference. And what you've taken on for yourself is really a huge, if not the number one issue that, is critical right now facing us, universally. And, also you described that, you come across information and it makes you reevaluate some of your beliefs. Well, that's the heart of a true empiricist. You just want to know the truth. You're not afraid to change your mind. And, in my practices, if I'm still doing the same thing year after year, I know I'm missing the mark because, you're not changing, you're not growing, you're really not incorporating. And the difference is you also have a tangible, grounded way to test to see if what you're doing actually holds any water. And then when things come across that maybe challenge the way you've been doing things, it's not to throw the whole thing out, but just to keep refining and be more effective. So Mitch, if we could back up just a second for the folks that may not understand what the heck we're talking about in the first place, as far as orgone and manipulating, the climate and the atmosphere. Is there an easy kind of layperson's cliff notes that you can give us as far as how it works in the first place?
I do want to say too, we did a show with Mitch already, guys. So if you're listening to this, I would hit pause and go listen to the previous Alfacast we did last year with Mitch, because we do cover like the core foundations of Wilhelm Reich and the orgone energy. But good question, Bear. Yeah. Just the rudimentary basics would be a good.
Yeah. Definitely. I was actually just going to say, like, for sure, kind of that's sort of like a part one, but to connect to that, and people can go to my website. I always embed your stuff as well. So if you go to theorgonedonor.com, you'll find it there. For some reason, they can't find on YouTube or all the other platforms. But as far as what it is we're talking about, so what we're talking about is the idea that this was centered around, when you hear the name Wilhelm Reich, that's because he's considered the father of orgonomy. He, back in like the 40s and 50s, basically testing biological creature or biological beings to basically measure a bioelectrical force that was being attracted to or repelled by people or by living things. And this energy that, he coined, that it moves through the atmosphere, and all of it lined up with what other cultures call the chi, the prana. I think in physics, they're a lot more comfortable now using scalar, although scalar, I think that's a whole other can of worms, being unfair, because you can use scalar technology for good and bad. And I wouldn't call orgone energy bad. It's the life force. It's whatever is the anti to that is something different that's not orgone. So I'd say the same with scalar. But the life energy, basically, there are things around this realm in which we live that are exerting energy signatures that are either coherent with life or they are not. And that's why I mentioned in this realm, it's like everything is either pro-life or anti-life. And I mean that to the fullest extent. You either are and really just like the absolute truth, everything with the truth, because everything falls in line when everything is the absolute truth. It just naturally happens the way creation had, set it up to be. And so these things that exist to create, negative energy, incoherent energy, anti-life energy, there are ways to heal from those. There are ways to treat those energy fields or those devices. In this case, when I say towers, I mean cell towers. Those are one example of basically a death device, or I call them death towers, because of the energy fields that they create that are tapping into the ether, and they're doing something to manipulate this realm and its life force that passes through everything. And so, what it does is it just chain reactions and throws everything off, not just the weather. It doesn't just help with geoengineering. It's like they're literally terraforming the planet. They're changing the natural realm and overshadowing it with this fake thing. And then, of course, the problem is you have to fake if you fake this over here, you got to fake this and fake that and fake that, which is what we see them trying to do. And then it all starts to kind of fall apart because it's why you don't lie. Once you lie, you have to remember the lie, and then you can't connect, just tell the truth. Well, life would be truth. And so you can use these tools that we're talking about, what we call orgonite. And there's all this information as far as like the logistics of where it came from, how it came to be, what it's made out of, all of that. This can be found on my website. It's very compartmentalized so that it's fairly easy to find. And we talked about it in that last episode too. But these devices will tap into those energy fields. They are a method or a mechanism, kind of like the biogeometry devices that are, we all have energy structures. Everything is just talking and reacting, acting and reacting to everything else in existence all the time. Well, so what's coherent with what? And so something's trying to basically throw that off, and we're doing something to throw it on, basically put it back together. And so these devices like earth pipes, one of the things I sent for the music and sky is they're a device that gets buried in the ground. It's a metal pipe filled with what we call the orgonite. And there's an array of crystals inside and a matrix. I have a very specific recipe I use. I teach on my website. I've got tutorials, instructions, ingredients, and enough frequently asked questions to like keep you entertained for years. But the earth pipe is buried in the ground, completely under the surface of the earth. And it will tap into those energy fields like what the cell towers are tapped into with all their network, their cables, the water sources that they put them on. And one of the things I've done over the last year I did an entire project called Earth Pipes Across Arizona. I wanted to have like a little shtick. And that is essentially what the name implies. I have put earth pipes all over the state of Arizona, but in a manner that has strategy to it. And so like when you're learning about all these different topics, anyone who could have a heyday listening to your podcast forever, all your guests, everyone contributes something. You learn this perspective, you learn this about water, you learn this about the ether, you learn this about geoengineering. And it's like, you put all that together. I put that together as best I can, this puzzle, and find that like we can use these tools to tap into the energy grid that is essentially restoring the natural order on a frequency base of this realm. And I had thought of an analogy last night that I don't know, I like to think this is a good one, but everyone's probably heard like, what if you traveled back in time, you had a time machine, you go back in time and they say, don't even step on a bug. Because if you step on a bug, you'll go back to your time, assuming you assume linear time travel, but you'll go back in time and like all of a sudden, like your grandfather doesn't exist and you don't, because you stepped on a bug. Well, if that, a lot of people do believe that you can't mess up anything. Well, let's just pretend you take a time machine literally to this exact moment in time, disappear, reappear, and you go and you change something out of order, then it's going to chain reaction. And if you specifically are changing that order in an unnatural way, because this technology is not coherent with life, then it's going to not just spiral. It's not just going to be the weather. It's going to be the plant life, the animal life, us, our bodies, our, everything we're reacting with how we're poisoned in the air, water, we're poisoned 24/7 essentially by something, that doesn't like us too much. And so you have to do all of this stuff to keep that artificial order in order, which we're seeing it is falling out of order. And that's why the term shit show has become a very popular word for the last 2 or 3 years. But anyway, for these devices, they can tap into that network or that part of the realm and help to heal that or help to repair. I call myself an etheric realm repairman. And I like, the idea, like I've done research on cell towers that leads me to think they're creating some kind of rift, or there's a million agendas, there's a million things going on. I should say this is one of those things I think it's doing. And it's creating these rifts, and you can go and repair those rifts so that whatever it is they're doing with this energy to take over the life of this realm or to create their fake world, you can shut that down. And so is that okay? I guess, sorry, that was really long-winded, my bad, but
No, that was good. And, quick comment is what we need to understand or appreciate more is that you can even affect timelines or our perception of time, because if these overlays are keeping us from reaching into those levels of consciousness where we come out of future and past time, living in more of that present time, that's where we come into our true power. So by dampening our ability to reach into those realms and receive those, those downloads, then we're constantly caught in this fiction of past, present, instead of in a moment. And we're easy to manipulate then. And we're kept in the illusion of time. And I really understand, I believe that that's one of the main things on the agenda. But then on the backside, people that understand what they're doing can move forward and backwards and do manipulation. So we're actually talking about manipulating timelines, and you can use that for good or otherwise.
yeah, absolutely. It's this is a side tangent, but related to orgone and time. Something I've found that I can't say this is a definitive, yes, this is how it is, but an observation I've made over the last year, especially with how clear our skies are. We just had actually I think this is one of the coldest summers ever. I think here in Sedona, the average temperature in July and August, the two hottest parts of the year, I believe the high was around 82 or 85. And down in Phoenix, it was between 98 and 102, when it's what they would call normal is 117 or 125. I mean, obnoxious numbers. We've had our ups and downs. We've had things that I go on my tangents on my Instagram with videos or basically my bitch rants, where it's like a certain day I see the extra microwave lines in the sky, or I see things actually in the news, like Mr. whatever, but Biden, Mr. Biden in front of like the bloody orange background and harping on whatever and divide and conquer, or pitting people against each other. And it's interesting how that stuff always coincides with what's going on in the sky. And all of a sudden there's shifts in the weather. There's shifts in, like our monsoon season was like a clock. I actually ended up catching a case of frequency poisoning, and I thought maybe this would come up, that because I think I got under the weather the same time you did, maybe about a month ago, sometime shortly around Labor Day. Right. And it was terrible, both myself and my partner. And I knew I was being poisoned. I knew I was being blasted with something, and I was having traumas. I was having past life. It was like almost like past life regression, not being able to sleep, muscle pain. And it was just interesting to me that it coincided with our average collective temperature in Arizona spiked. All of a sudden, July and August were, I would say, cold in comparison to previous years. And then all of a sudden, the first week of September around Labor Day, it just went through the roof. For just these couple of days, our monsoon season also shut off. It literally just stopped. We were having the biggest storms, flooding everywhere. People from Flagstaff telling me every day in emails and texts, please stop making it rain. And it just, everything stopped. And for those days that I was under the weather, and that there were several people I knew who were under the weather, it felt like being blasted with the most demonic energy whatsoever.
It was really very dark.
It was.
I don't know how to describe it. So Mike had the same symptoms a couple weeks before me, but was it during that time where it was hot? In fact, I remember clearly now, it very well was, because I'd go outside and I was just feeling dizzy and all these weird symptoms. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it was oppressive, weird heat. I felt like almost like my body was like burning up from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. We had the same sort of thing. We had a very late sort of spring where we literally, it rained here on the 4th of July, which was the first time in over 20 years. So usually where we are, our climate is very unique in that we have rainforest-like conditions up until March, April, and then we have desert-like conditions throughout the summer. So it's very rainy and then very dry, where we had a wet spring where it actually hurt a lot of our fruit trees, blossoms and things. Late May, June downpours, and then it got extremely, and we're experiencing right now, which I'm enjoying, but we have this Indian summer where we've had a kind of extreme heat for us in September when I was weird when you get like these type of symptoms and it's beautiful out like that, where it's hot and you're like, why am I feeling this way? Right. And there was this sort of synthetic feeling. I did get a metal taste in my mouth a few times. And which was interesting. So there's definitely, I feel like magic frequency targeting going on. I feel like they have AI systems that are seeing what you're doing online, what sort of effect you're having on the overall impact of their systems, and then they set out targets. I do believe that's happening. We do have people that work and live over by Bear and Deb that have regular bouts with this, and I hate to even come up with this idea that they're targeting the farm, but we know they have those systems in place. So this is why Orgonite's so important. And really what we're talking about here is the consciousness war, right? I hate to say the word war because immediately we're now creating that thought form of struggle or conflict. But however, it is important for us to be realistic here and know what's going on in the realm. And this has been an age-old battle that's been going on for eons. And this synthetic overlay that you were talking about earlier, Mitch, I do find it interesting that, you're talking about the mind control of the masses who don't understand the chemtrailing above them or understand what that CNN is basically lying to them. Well, the very effect of that mind control has to do with those systems in play.
Exactly.
It's those systems in play that are literally mind controlling them. So it's like the virus thing, right? Oh, I said the V word there. The same exact situation with the V word is that people get triggered when I say, hey, viruses aren't what they say. They actually have never been proven to exist. You can literally see like the fumes coming off their head, because the very thing they call virus that's attacking our systems, that's mind controlling us, is more of a mind virus, right? And so that's the same idea, is that these systems that they don't want to believe are real are the things that are causing them to not believe they're real, if that it makes sense. So, and then to the hater, there was a troll in the chat. We always get these Orgonite trolls, Scott, from the Orgonite scene that say what you're doing is not pure. It's toxic resins. And we'll get back into this today. I'd like to talk about this today a bit, but the funny thing is this troll was saying that Orgonite doesn't work. I've been making Orgonite forever in California. I've never seen its effect. And it was like negativity on the chat. And what Bear was saying about this being a living technology is so important to understand, is like literally how you inject your consciousness into this is what is going to give you the end effect. So for me, thanks to you, Mitch, you gifted us a ton of earth pipes and tower busters. I went with my kids last year, busted all the towers in our county, and did a grid of earth pipes along our ridgeline here of the mountains that go out to the ocean. And guess what? I've had clear blue skies since that. I mean, I've had record blue skies. I barely ever see a plane over us anymore, if at all. And that was because I believed in it, and my kids believed in it, and my people that were doing it believed in it. And I think that's a huge part, is belief. It's like the nocebo placebo effect. Well, that's real. And that this is an extension of our beliefs, which is what creates our reality. So I wanted to say that to the haters, that if you are making this out of like anger and you don't believe it's going to work, well, you probably aren't going to get a great effect from that. Would you say that's true?
We're talking about a technology assisted rain dance. You have indigenous cultures that made it rain, just surely by their intentions and getting together on the same page, a whole collective of a tribe, and doing the rituals, and it really works. Now we're talking about, actually using a technology to assist and amplify those. So sorry, Mitch, go ahead.
Oh no, I think it's funny, and I knew that would happen, because I think I know who it is. I think I know of this person, and they like to follow. But I'll play devil's advocate for myself, and I will just give the benefit of the doubt that we've learned in the last 2 to 3 years, especially, that the people who have the benefit, or the people who have the burden of proof, are actually, it's been inverted like everything else that there is. For example, you can if something has not been proven to exist, like Mike just said about that V word, if something hasn't been proven to exist, why is the burden of proof on the people who are saying they don't exist? That's kind of odd. But in this case, with me doing the work that I do, and everyone, I mean, the number of people I associate myself with who do the same thing and see the exact same results, it's like, okay, let's say it doesn't exist. Well, you're just simply saying this isn't true. And it's like, how do you prove it's not true? Well, what you do is you do what I did. You go to try and prove it wrong. And you find out that every single time you keep doing something, these results keep showing up. This effect keeps happening. You position yourself, and you spend a lot of time, energy, and money of your own to prove a point, and you keep testing this stuff, and then you're pleasantly surprised about this. And it's like, you can say all you want something like this doesn't exist, but it's like, I have more receipt to show that there is like a reason to keep going with this. It would be asinine to stop based on, it'd be like, you'd have to have blinders on, and you'd have to have like no remaining operational brain cells. So to me, I just find it funny that in this case, it's another case of where the burden of proof is put on the wrong person. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you other than I'm sorry that you're so upset. And I'd find a new hobby besides following me on podcasts, but that's just me. So
can I say one experience I had that was very interesting? So earlier this year in the spring, Alex Zek did an event called Sowing Sovereignty at a farm, Sow a Heart Farm, in the middle of a very dry valley in Central California. And Sam, who is right now bringing all this orgonite for us for Music and Sky, he's amazing. He's been up at the farm. He's a dear friend of Alfa Vedic and you, Mitch. Thank you, Sam, for all that you do for the community and for the world. You're amazing. So he was actually volunteering at this event. He brought some big old chem busters, like the CT Buster style ones. And he had those at the farm. And it was just, this was last like March or April, I believe it was in March. And it was just a dry, super dry, sunny day, nothing in the, weather in terms of any kind of moisture coming through. And in this valley, a lot of like power lines and towers, you could just feel it sucking the moisture out of the air when you're driving through this valley. It seemed very lifeless for something that's supposed to be an agricultural basin. So anyways, he had these towers there, and I was doing a little video of them. And by like 1 or 2 o'clock, I kid you not, it starts sprinkling on the event. The clouds came in and the mist came down and it started sprinkling on us. Alex Zek and I were just talking about this, and we didn't even make that connection at first. We're like, oh, weird. It's like sprinkling here. And people were like kind of getting under the covers and coverings and stuff. And then I realized it's those chem busters are here. And what it wasn't just the chem busters there. It was that we collectively had a super conscious and like vibrant and awake community there that was channeling our energy through those. So that was an experience we had. And this stuff is real.
One thing I'll say to that with the rain or with the sprinkling, I will apologize in advance if it rains on your event. I'm sorry, and I don't know what to do about it. But my thought was also that it's like there is collectively, I mean, this is energetic. There is an etheric component to this realm that it's out of the box and has to be talked about. And so that collective energy, yes, it holds weight. There's going to be this is the biggest group I've done any kind of gifting with. And so, even just it being there is going to, again, carry these energy signatures collectively, and the intention of everyone who's going to that event as well. It's like, you can't find a better, it's like, because it is all about intention. And I've carried I sat on my patio. I mean, I wanted to say about getting sick, something was trying to slow me down because it was nauseating to sit in bed and not be able. I was like, I gotta finish this. I'm in like the home stretch. But then when I was finally back to feeling myself again, and I was out on my patio, I went a little overboard. I sanded and polished everything, and hopefully by then everyone gets a nice bright and shiny copper pipe, but it might be a little off from the time lapse. But overall, it's like going through every one of those and like just polishing every last tower buster. I'm thinking to myself, this, like, help this person do this thing. And I'm just, and it really even not even having to say anything. I'm just smiling inside and just thinking, I'm kind of actually thinking, yeah, that's right, you mother, parasites, like this stuff is coming for you. And it'll just be exciting. And really part of why, with having your event where it is, for those who want to make more sense of like my method of madness, the same way I went south, I started kind of south and southwest in Arizona. Back in 2020, I started gifting those chem busters, the tall copper pipe bazookas. And the point of going there first with my earth pipes and all that was to move, I guess I'll do it this way, but to move from the state, like with the jet stream, and open up that jet stream that comes off of the Southwest and up through the rest of the state. And it was just really a theory I had, like, surely if that segment of towers is collectively neutralized, or at least as many of them as possible, then would it keep that flow of energy going in which those storms can build up and stop being suffocated before they get to the center of the state and onward through the northern part. And I noticed that's like the more south and southwest we went, the more rain we were getting north. And then so it's like, so we want to get to Phoenix, we go down to the border. And it's like, we started doing like just all along from like Yuma over to Phoenix and Tucson and Green Valley. And we, went to Tombstone. We went along the border and did all kinds of stuff, left a lot of things in boating accidents. But basically it's like putting stuff in a place that will carry that energy up and away, or whatever direction it needs to go. And it will actually benefit other areas. I think that people gifting in Southern California will actually benefit Northern Arizona, part of Utah, part of Idaho, Nevada, that whole area. I think it really will also help Lake Mead, which has been a huge part of my overall project. Lake Mead and Lake Powell, they're at the top of my list of what I'm trying to do. And so, which one of my talking points is that for those who are aware, the whole country I know is watching Lake Mead, or you hear it because it's all about whatever. All it is people putting people against each other to fight and hate people in California for stealing their water. And it's like, no, it is a natural formed reservoir. It's not even a lake, but they call it Lake Mead. It's a reservoir. It is a retainer for storing its water storage. And in the last 30 to 50 years, it's like the amount of people tapping straws into it is what's changed. And the amount of the organization and those who are in charge of where water goes it's like everything else. It's run by idiots. It's run by psychopaths. It's run by parasites. So you've got this body of water that everyone's like, oh, it's going down. It's going down. Well, I will tell you, it's actually been going up. I'll put it on my website because there's a father-son duo who's been a friend brought to my attention. They've been going around the lake for several months now and putting their own markers. And they're saying things the media refuses to say about that lake going up. And even just like, we've had some monsoon days here. These are some of the heaviest monsoons I've ever seen. I've only been here 4 years. All of my neighbors acknowledge like there's something different about this. There's so much more power behind them. It's like the life has been injected back into these storms. And with the lightning and the light show, everything, like every time when the lightning hits and recharges these magnetic fields, it's like the earth is changing. The ozone is getting stronger, the rainfall is getting heavier, and that lake is going up. Both of those lakes are going up, but the TV gets the last word. And I learned about this. This is one of the things I know we can talk about today too, is the climate deception is such a circus at this point. And it's really hard for me. I have to, like, people send me stuff all the time. And a lot of times I set it aside because I'm like, that's just going to piss me off. And what I mean by that is when someone sends me an article about, it's like, you'll see a video that's being viral and it's like, they've got somebody with a camera and they're looking at a river and they're like, oh, the river, look, due to man-made climate change. And they're like, the river has dried up. And underneath of that river are dinosaur tracks that are 33 million years old for some reason. And they're just there in the riverbed. And it's like, look how, so what they're doing is they're like, it's a trifecta or like a bingo card of bullshit when it comes to the climate agenda, because it's like dinosaur legs that are 33 million years old. You get that can of worms, but they're telling you It's because why? It's because of you. It's because of your fault. It's because you did something. Kill yourself. That's the mentality of what these parasites try to do with the climate hoax. And in the case of like Lake Mead, you know, one thing people don't know is that that lake is actually used to fill other bodies of water in Nevada, not even just providing the drinking water. But that's a whole other can of worms. People can look up the connections between Lake Mead and Lake Las Vegas. But the lake just went up a ton, and you know, people saw the Vegas flooding that actually ended up back in Lake Mead. And so it's been going up, and I go off of what other people who are actually on the ground saying and doing. That, you know, I hear from people who travel through, it's like at least every couple days I get these emails, and it's people who travel through, visit Arizona or fly over it. And everyone's been saying the same thing, like, my God, I can't believe how green it is. And we actually, like, the thing I noticed when I was getting ready for our interview, I went and I wanted to brush up on some videos specifically about what's going on with Lake Mead and the Hoover Dam. And I browsed thousands of comments over the last few days, and there's only one there's a center theme on every comment, and all it is pitting people against each other, that who's using what, and that there isn't enough of this or that or whatever. But it's like the water is drained and wasted. Water's wasted everywhere. And you know, like you'll see these articles that say Lake Mead went down 137 feet over the last 20 years. But that part of the article they don't tell you is how many feet it went up. And so it's like, well, this is just a bogus statistic anyway. It literally means nothing. It's kind of like the other day this is our latest monsoon season, and that's kind of starting to get weird because we've got rain coming later, I think today and most of the weekend. And we got hammered earlier this week. Monsoons in October is not normal. And the news was all about it, the headlines, every headline, it was flash flood, or it was like flood warnings or flood watches for all of Arizona. Phoenix unlikely to receive a drop. You know, it's like, so find the biggest population, pull it out the rug, tell them they aren't getting jack squat. It's always like, it just rains, and they're like, the only thing the headline says is hikers swept away, blah blah blah, or beware of scorpions coming out of the ground after torrential deadly water. You know, it's like, it's always like deadly downpour, whatever they can do to make it evil. And I'm just looking around and I'm like, how about like monsoon 2022 revitalizes entire state? That would never be a headline. That would generate positive energy. That would be encouraging. So of course they're not going to do that. But the deception behind this climate stuff is just bonkers. Even the other, you guys might have even known this since being where you are. Do you hear about like the flooding that took place in Death Valley, like back in, I had a date for it, but I want to say it was like about a month and a half ago. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was nuts. And the article, all it pinpointed was, you know, how it was colder around Death Valley, and it typically gets quite hot. The name it's in the name. And they got, I don't know how much rain. It was like they got like the majority of the yearly rain in like 10 minutes. And at the end of, you know, throughout the article, they're saying, you know, temperatures expected to, scorching temperatures returning this week. That was what it said. Scorching temperatures return to the valley this week in the 80s and 90s. And I thought, scorching temperatures in the 80s and 90s. I know around here, 80s, if I leave my window open at night, I still need a blanket. So it's just like the things they do. I mean, you see it in the news, you see it in everything. They used to use blue and green color coding whenever they showed a map. Now, even in wintertime, they're using yellow, orange, and red.
Yeah, and like, all the weather climate maps are all red. I saw that even in like the UK, there was the same exact temperatures from like 5 years ago that were all blue, and now they have them all in red. It's just these little signals they have. They play with our biology and our neurology to increase the fear matrix, because they know this is a consciousness battle, and they know the consciousness is waking up and it's rising. And so the AI systems and the news systems have to inject fear in all the languaging.
Yeah. When I said there's something that needs us to exist, but not vice versa, that is exactly what I'm talking about. And that's what I think these tools are great for essentially, you know, I don't just think I'm trying to restore the weather. I essentially think I'm combating artificial intelligence, really, whatever. And some people would say, like, no, I don't mean Terminator. I mean artificial consciousness, really, and anti-life. I am combating whatever this anti-life is, that is a frequency. It has vessels. I think those vessels are in the form of our computers and smart devices and the electrical grid and whatnot. But I also think it's in the form of things that are programs we call, people don't like when I say this, that's why I'm going to say it, is NPCs. I think NPC actually stands for no possible chance of ever waking up. That's just my personal opinion. And that's why, like, you'll find such a divide now between like what Jason Brashears has said. When I heard him first use that word errant, I was like, oh, I like that. It's like you are the error to this code of nonsense, and you've removed yourself. And we feel like we don't. It's like, do we belong here? And we feel like we're in the Twilight Zone because we are an error to that artificial nonsense. There are other things that I think are vessels for that frequency that are outside of our like pro-life and pro-truth frequency, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, so the way I see it is that the astral is the real internet. That was the real network of the way we actually engage with each other, that is beyond time. And that's like the overlay of the system, how it's actually supposed to work. And that's, you know, essentially what they're doing is creating a synthetic astral. And so when I say they, it's these thought forms. It's and some would say that it's just the sort of negative intentions of our consciousness that they're turned into these egregores that sort of feed on our own sort of belief systems, or these archons, or whatever you want to call it. There is something there that is creating a technological overlay, a synthetic astral, if you will, and that plays into all those nodes of those NPCs that are essentially slowly evolving into a pure synthetic form of that, what, you know, Rudolf Steiner would call the eighth sphere. And so the etheric energy of the organite is an ancient technology that goes back Atlantis, Lemuria, whatever. That is the flip side that connects directly to the astral. That is like sort of a gateway into that. And I think it's important that we understand how water plays into that, how our dreams play into that, how this is all connected. And so it'll be interesting. And Bear and I talked about this with Tom Barnett when he was on, because they were experiencing all these floodings and everything that were being created there in Australia earlier this year, is that the weather is a direct interplay with our consciousness. We control the weather literally with our consciousness, with our spirit. And so the more of these NPCs, the more dead the weather gets too. And then one last thing, and I'd love to hear Bear's thoughts on this a bit too, is we have talked about the grand solar minimum, right? And that does have an effect on the overall macro scale of the weather. And that's why we're getting these cooler summers. We're coming into a grand solar minimum where we're going to have longer winters and colder climates and more extremes. But my question is, and James True touched a bit about this last week, is the sun, how does that directly interconnect with the organite, with the orgone energy, with our etheric bodies, with our consciousness? And how do these grand cycles work with the overall sort of interplay between the synthetic and the natural real? So there's a lot of this holistic, huge system at play that I think we need to realize we have a lot of power over as individual consciousness.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And we have to expand our thinking a little bit. When we just look at solar minimum, okay, there's validity to the fact that that is happening, and it does have an effect. But we also have to step back a little bit and look at the grander cycles and the sky clock, the sun being that source of every informational field for every life form in this realm, as it, sorry to say this, revolves around our plane. It is with every precession, with all the constellations with it, are creating a consciousness evolution. So it's not just that, oh God, the solar system is working against us and now we're going to go into an old ice age. No, it is all purposely orchestrated and designed for humanity's expansion of consciousness. Along with that comes less vulnerability to our external circumstances in the first place. And what you gentlemen were talking about earlier, the different levels of ether that is actually the source of all of that life consciousness that creates our realm in the first place, is what they're manipulating and getting our currency from in order to run their whole matrix. So the thing that's really freaking them out right now is we're literally going over their heads. Organite is a way where, okay, we're going to bypass, this manipulation on this level, just go above you, create, as we always say, coherence that is going to then manifest on the ground. And meanwhile, we're going to stop giving you our energy. We're going back to those planes of creation, the mental, the astral plane, and we're going to start creating from there, which is what we've been doing all along. We just didn't know that somebody usurped our, conduits into that level and is using our life force to create the very things that we're all wringing our hands about right now. So it's game over as soon as we figure that out.
For anybody new to my ramblings, I had watched one of the most fascinating interviews that I used to connect to what I was doing. It was with a gentleman named Eric Dollard, and it was on, it's a little bit older. I only watched this maybe a year ago, but it was from 2019 on the Higher Side Chats. And Eric talks about the repercussions of building up this web that we have built. Essentially, it's like this will sound darker than I intended to be, but that we're essentially building the portal for the demon to come through and take over us. And that is where, like with my work, I'm trying to tap into and restructure that portal so that it is in favor of us and what it needs to be in this realm. Because the etheric is overshadowing the physical. Everything in the etheric it controls what's down here in the physical. That is why, if people, I'm not recommending people go watch the news, but pay attention, get as many perspectives of what's going on around the world as you can. And don't look so much at, I don't look so much at what they, or what I would call, because of Eric, I would say it. Don't look so much at what it is doing or trying to do, because it isn't it. Look at the intention behind what it is doing and the rate at which it's doing and the level of desperation at which it is, exerting itself to do what it's trying to do. I see more, I learned more about geoengineering when I got into the tower busting side and started playing with Orgonite. It made more sense because it wasn't just this thing, a military operation, and that's it, and it's just like, oh, the government poisons us because they want us to buy more drugs. It's beyond bigger than that. So in the same way, it's like this thing we're up against. It's like, look at as many perspectives as you can to try and make sense of, because people ask me why doesn't stop my Wi-Fi? I can still get my Wi-Fi. And they're like, well, why? And I'm like, because they aren't telling you everything that your Wi-Fi, they aren't telling you how it really works. They aren't telling you what it really does, that it's essentially opening up. There's a reason they call it a gateway. There's a reason that gateway computers or gateway modems, routers, whatever, they're telling you, they're opening up a path in which to open up their playground. And we've gladly expanded this playground forever, especially the NPCs that need the latest and greatest whatever device. And so, it's like, learn those perspectives and see what's going on, because you're going to see a manipulation of energy. You're going to see the intention. Even if you're watching something more trivial, like the president giving a speech or making look at the student loan thing, the divide and conquer my friend and I, we've been dissecting this on our own little side thing. about the misery, because we're like, why would you do something like this that would bring so much joy to such a large number of people? Because they will never bring joy to a large number of people. That energy signature in this realm would throw everything back into its natural cycle. So it's like, well, then what is it? Because it is bringing some joy to people. It's bringing far more misery and division to it. That the joy that it does bring is collateral damage for this thing that's causing it. So it's like, look at energy signatures, look at the forecast, the spell cast that's made. Look at what they tell you about the weather. There's nothing, no, I mean, we're over here basking in beauty, but the only thing you'd ever hear about is probably what just happened to Florida. You know, it's like, or something worse somewhere else, like Australia and the flooding this last year. You know, it's like, look at what they've diverted where they need to, where energy goes, or sorry, where attention goes, energy flows. And so it's like, we're just helping them pinpoint all of this stuff. So it's like, my role, get in there with these tools and shut that crap down, basically.
And it's working.
Yeah. And the portals thing, it's interesting how, like, I'm thinking, it made me think of Astro World, that crazy music festival in Houston, where they literally were trying to open up a portal to some demonic realm, and people were hearing all this crazy, like heavy bass sounds and falling down and like passing out. And of course it was really sad. People died at that. And I think that was like a dark magic sort of ritual that shows how desperate they're getting, that they're just doing that way out in the open. You know, it's I was just gonna say, that's not Music in Sky. Music in Sky is the opposite of that. Like, literally, we will be doing rain dances and meditation for love and peace and harmony, and we'll be reverting all the damage that was done at Astroworld with a fraction of the amount of people. Go ahead.
When I first started in the organized stuff, and you know, the first resources I came across were the common thread, like Don and Carol Croft, George Ritchell at Organize Africa. I'm going to forget someone right now because I have too many thoughts in my head, but like, there are spearheads, there are pioneers to this movement, which isn't really a movement. People can read my website about that. This isn't the type of movement you have because it gets infiltrated. This is the type of movement where you take an active role yourself and you decide the best method for yourself to proceed with what you're doing with it. But where I was going with that, I about lost my train of thought here. There was a general consensus that as people were gifting, like in the early years, you can clean up the territory of an area in a way that certain frequencies are no longer capable of being in existence within those areas, because you need the pathway. So I just wanted to say, like, when I was in Chicago, there was it was 2016 or 2015, I think, there was like Hillary was going to do a big rally, something going on. And I worked down in the Loop, and I went through the Federal Reserve, and there was a downtown prison, the Social Security, every low vibrational piece of crap building, going around the Loop and just gritting the bejesus out of everything I could in downtown Chicago. And coincidentally, it was canceled, and there wasn't ever an explanation for it. It just didn't happen. Now, that isn't enough, but in comparison with other people's stories, it was like, oh, well, here's what I did. And like this, like it was as if like evil can't, whatever your interpretation of evil is, it's like evil can't flow in that area. And so I would say, as far as the Music in Sky Festival, it's probably impossible for that to even happen. Around here in Arizona, I think I see all the time manipulations of energy from other places. Like it's like they're using what we're all connected to try and use what they can over here to do some damage over here. And that's why I would tell people, I don't care if you're being sprayed with chemtrails above, or whether or not you live by a 5G tower, you should be getting out there if you are able and be busting each tower, because your grid, my grid, every grid, it's like, we've seen these sadistic things put towers and energy conductors and all sorts of things around the vortexes and the ley lines, and they connect stuff. We should therefore be connecting stuff as well. Like, they know everything's connected. We do too. So it's like, just because I'm doing something in Arizona and someone else in like North Carolina, I think North Carolina has an issue actually with geoengineering, but some hidden gem that has like no chemtrails ever and everything's the bee's knees. It's like, it doesn't matter. Go find what feeds that web. Go find it and neutralize that component, because when mine runs out, I see them move to other areas to try and bring what problem they have over here to this over here. We got to tear this down quickly. You know, that's how this energy etheric web works.
But the real efficacy in this is not just so much breaking down what they're doing, but we're creating those areas where the natural patterns of nature, you know, the ether that would overwhelm what they're trying to do in 2 seconds. It's so much more powerful. So, you know, I think we really have to keep our just our mindset in that, you know, the solution is already there. We're just allowing it to come in, because if you take all their cell towers, their miles of cobwebs of wires on the planet and everything else that they're doing, it's still not even a speck compared to universal creation and natural order. And all we're doing is inviting that back in. You know, biogeometry, it's the same thing. We're not, we have ways to protect our homes from Wi-Fi and outside interference. But what we do is we create an overwhelming abundance of natural energy, that golden mean energy, to come in, so that anything else that is there, even if we're on Wi-Fi at the same time, it's going to be overwhelmed by that other good stuff, the natural order that is, you know, going to prevent it from having any bad effects on us in the first place. One thing I also wanted to mention, you know, as I've been talking about here, you know, we're this winter where we have some free time after harvest, we're going to get on board full time with, you know, creating our own orgone devices and things. And I intend to use biogeometry with it, because with biogeometry, you can tap into the various different ley lines in the earth. You can measure those very accurately, and then use that to, you know, tell where we should be putting these devices in the ground, because then they will have a much greater effect. So anybody out there that's doing biogeometry or any kind of sophisticated dowsing where you can tap into these different ley lines, you can either prevent, you know, the bad juju from flowing, or you can use the, you know, the beneficial conduits in order to spread what you're trying to do and have a much greater effect than if you're just sticking it in the ground haphazardly.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Barry, you have my mind spinning on the ley lines idea of them being the original pipes for the original internet, right? And we were talking last week with James True about how we can replace the internet with something, you know, eventually a more analog version, and that already exists. Like, that infrastructure is already there. So like, it's all coming together, guys. You were talking about the Chicago buildings of the, you know, in every city you look in, it's like these communist looking structures, prison structures with all the angles of sorrow. Well, those buildings were put there too to maintain that synthetic overlay, where we know, like, the classical Tartarian architecture of the cathedrals and the domes and all that. Those were etheric built. Those are orgonite structures, right? They had specifically were created with piezoelectric effects to create fields of etheric energy for healing in the towns themselves. So not what we're talking about is a revolution of consciousness, where we build our own separate societies in the private, where we create our own little townships with dome buildings without the angles of sorrow, that have the etheric structure of emanation of consciousness, that have we won't even need the earth pipes and all this great work you're doing. You will know that you've done your job, Mitch, when you can retire and just go hang out in these healing structures, in these beautiful food forests where people are doing commerce in the private and aren't worried about all this nonsense anymore. That is where we're going in the end. That is the consciousness revolution.
You know, I think that the frequencies that are battling each other essentially, and we're observing, I see the frequency of AI being negatively impacted all the time, especially where I live. There are certain days when I think solar activity is more active. I have, for myself, I have a lot of theories, and I know people don't like that word, but I make educated guesses to what it may be going on above me. And when the obstruction of the sun, like I'm sitting here moving around, I've got so many chem busters and have put so many around the desert. It's like they're sort of like, it's the Orgone bazooka, and moving these things around, or I put them on turntables and keep things rotating, or I play with these types of frequency devices that are, have a frequency being blasted into them, and I'm changing channels and waves and all kinds of stuff, and testing, what happens when you puncture a hole through this, what we call the DOR, the deadly orgone radiation bubble, or the electrosmog. When rainstorms come in and fog starts to form, I know there are certain channels that we from experimenting with other friends, we turn it to certain numbers, and it immediately converts that crap to rain, and bam, and all of a sudden you get this downpour. Or like you've been experimenting since I think I sent it to you, the power wand. This is actually something that would require a whole other episode, but there's a lot of developments with that particular thing. It's a chem buster in your pocket, depending on the channels you're using, or the waves you're using, and the type of year or the time of year, the direction, how you're spinning it, whatever. But as far as like for people that hear me say, go bust towers, when I started doing this is why I said my opinion, I'm evolving in what I think. If we had this conversation 5 years ago, I'd say take the hockey puck, find a way to put this around wherever the towers are in your area. Put one of these around every tower and call it a day. Well, now it's like, no, we know, at least when I say that, I mean like me and the people I am associating with, burying earth pipes over springs and wells. And like I just heard from a friend in Virginia who she has a natural spring under her property. She has a little farm compound, and her pond had dried up, which was fed by this spring. And she finally buckled down. She got one of those big chem busters. I sent her a whole bunch of earth pipes. She got everything in the ground. And then she left to, I think, go to Vegas or something for the month, and came back. And her pond is full again, and the spring is on. And it's like, well, isn't that a coinky dink? And we've seen that coincidence a lot. And it's like, I'm not saying, oh, well, just do this, this is going to happen. But I am saying there are a lot of people burying these types of devices in the ground and using certain geographic information to pinpoint places that are better for it, and bringing water. Like I wholeheartedly believe that frequency devices that it has established, like towers, are meant to keep primary water away from us, to keep it from coming to the surface, to keep it from going to the tops of mountains, to prevent, because they've convinced the entire population that our drinking water comes from rain, and it does not. It comes from the ground. And we live on a planet or whatever this realm is you want to call it, but it's called Earth when it should be called water, because there is far more water than there is land, at least from what we're allowed to know about. So it's like these things have a rhyme and a reason when you're busting towers, but they also, you create a grid. You can tap into the same, like find the energy structures they've put up and try to figure out, like, why did they do this? Decode why they've set up what they've set up. And you can then decode, these are like the best places to do this work. It's not always going to just be the 5G tower on the corner of the block. So.
Yeah, fantastic. If you wouldn't mind, you gave a little teaser about the power wand there, and
sure.
I know that's a big discussion. Yeah. But and we did a little first time around, but maybe starting with that, just give us a little kind of a quick tutorial on each one.
Yeah. Okay. So when people find the only other person I know of who makes power wands, this is what this has inside of it. This isn't a good representation, but this is a Mobius coil wrapped crystal that's ready to put into what they call a sucker punch. You wrap the crystal certain ways, and then you find a way to, and through the ends there, you blast or broadcast some form of frequency into the crystal. The crystal is placed inside of this copper pipe. This is a little bit bigger, I think, than the one I gave Mike. It's it kind of hurts the wrist, but go big or go home, I guess. But you fill it with orgonite, and this is a really dense. I only use powder in these, so they are pretty heavy. The mineral, of course, is smaller. The layers between the resin and the metal is obviously greater than it would be with shavings, but the crystal is essentially in the center of it, fed out into, instead of a 15 hertz zapper like a sucker punch, I feed it out into an auxiliary cord. And with that, there are different things we can broadcast into it using some kind of an electronic device. I also learned this weekend from Sam. He has one of those Spooky 2 devices, like in the Rife machine. And so things I want to experiment with more when I'm finally done, like turning the rain back on. I want to get more into the power wand stuff, but there are things you do with power wands, which I mentioned the word last time we talked. I used the word ether damming, essentially damming up, or you're creating a barrier, or you're creating a force against the natural flow within the ether. I don't know if that's the best thing, but it just, ether damming was the word I came across. And that was actually from Trevor James Constable that we were talking about. Okay. And so the idea of pushing against this force, it's like, what elements are affected when you start concentrating this energy, or it's like, in a way, you're almost stopping it, and then it's collecting. So when you're done, and when I say that, I mean, like, people have probably seen Mike in the group. They've probably seen this on the Telegram group. You've gone around and made some videos with yours. There are motions you can do with these things, based on clockwise or now counterclockwise, and different channels that you would be changing either through a frequency generator or some different tones that have been experimented with by just, I mean, I talk to everybody, and then I just like start trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. So like, I know, for example, if you have a power wand and you turn on 30 hertz, for some reason, 30 hertz in a square wave, I've learned, aimed up at the sky as like clouds go over, will actually pull, and it will always increase the percentage chance of rain. And one of your followers had reached out to me a couple months ago. I got her involved with it. There's this lovely woman named Tiff over in Virginia who was playing around with this as well, and she wrote up a report for me. So I'm trying to collect data on it, because there's really not a lot of information about the power wand, and of the other people or person who sells them, they are really treated more as just the sucker punch, like an over glorified sucker punch. I shouldn't say over glorified, because they're actually, I mean, they're still beneficial, but it's like you take a sucker punch, which is just a crystal broadcasting a frequency, and you embed it in some kind of metal pipe surrounded by orgonite, and you're amplifying it. Yeah. Well, and in my case, doing the audio thing, I wanted to be able to change the channel, and I didn't just want the cloaking device, the sucker punch. So it's like, I never have heard anybody else talking about it yet. And I treaded very lightly. I think we only talked about it for a minute or two. And I only talk to people typically on the phone who, whenever they get a power wand, like we have a conference, and I will send them a cheat sheet of just like what I know so far, different tones to play with, observations to look for, and like just kind of, the rigmarole of it. But yeah, that's the wand.
Yeah. And I will say this, from the times I played with it, I've definitely made it rain. I forgot I left it on one time during an event here last March, and all of a sudden it started sprinkling that night on the event. And I was like, oh, I got to go turn that thing off. It is interesting how the different hertz and frequencies, it reminds me a little bit of like the same idea with tuning forks, right? You're essentially sending certain frequencies through the field, through the ether. And then that is like, you're doing like a biofield tuning with it. You're affecting the biofield. And then my thinking was eventually getting a record player, playing some Beethoven or Mozart that's analog from a record, and then directing that, because it's just an audio in plug that's just sending the audio frequencies through, and literally blasting Bach or something, some like beautiful resonant harmonies coming from that sort of music from that time, the Tartarian time, let's say, up in the atmosphere, and see what happens. And essentially what we're doing is we're emitting beauty into the world through it. And then even on my DJ sets, I've plugged in 432 hertz into it and blasting the dance floor with it while I'm DJing, which I'll be doing at Music and Sky. I will have the power one there and I'll be blasting the dance floor with these resonant harmonies.
You'll have to collaborate, I think, because I sent Sam off with one as well. And so it's totally experimental. I want to be clear on that for folks that it's one of the things I've migrated into. It's no longer just about busting towers. You get out and you want to get out there to the devices that are feeding the frequency web in the first place. It starts with your own. If you have a smart meter, it starts there. It starts with Wi-Fi. It starts with minimizing your own usage of certain types of technology, grounding things properly, doing the corded fiber method, keeping the incoherent frequency web to a minimum in your immediate space. And then from there, you work your way outward and through your community and onward. One of the things I've done recently to sort of, because I feel like I'm at a point where I've got so many little boots on the ground. I had a house packed full of people the last few days, picking up things to take to their corresponding parts of the state and to share with their group. So right now, even with everybody watching this, there are a lot of people today, tomorrow, and for the next week or two that will be taking care of those little communities in which they live. And another orgone bubble pops up, another bubble here, another bubble there, and it's just breaking down that artificial web. I do, to toot my own horn, I do want to point out that it just so people understand the scope of how much work has really gone into this. It's not just earth pipes. It's not just going out. It's not filling the car with 100 whatever tower busters and taking day trips around the state. It's, I've gifted those chem busters. Back in 2020, I did a bunch until 5G was unleashed in like March or whatever, to coincide with the Wuhan wiggle. And we needed more. And so I actually just this summer, I just put 17 of them around the state. I bought 17 of them because, again, I'm like, go big or go home. And I don't have a lot of time. For people that have never made one, they are a labor of love. I have instructions on my website, and I would encourage anybody who wants one, if you can't afford to buy one, then obviously make one. I didn't have the time because of all the other moving parts. My work is better served in going out to neutralize the individual parts of the web and then just buy these things and find good homes for them. But it's definitely had an impact because, having a wetter monsoon season this year than last year, it's obviously paid off. But it's like, this is it's really an unpaid full-time job. And I already have a full-time job that has nothing to do with this. So it's like, it's exhausting. I think I slept in 2020, and I hope to again someday soon, but I'm just, so people know, like I tell them, start small, start in your community, whatever, but, give it serious thought and be strategic about it. And again, like I said, gather those perspectives from, just always keep taking in, which I know your followers are already doing. It's like, just keep taking in those perspectives, because I even thought, if I can tangent about the, archaic stuff and how that applied to what I'm doing, as I think about the possibilities, I don't know what I always think, because I'm forever pleasantly surprised, and I've only ever been lied to my entire life until the point I chose to stop being lied to. So I've got a lot of damage to fix from the previous, existence. But in learning that information, things like the Phoenix event, which, I'm sure people watching this very familiar with, whether you agree with it or not. When I think about those perspectives, the vapor canopy coming back, the ozone layer, the ozone gas producing levels of oxygen, and like, we're just becoming superheroes. Maybe that's part of this thing too. And then, of course, the component of elites going under the ground and that whole can of worms. I won't go too deep into it, but I actually like to think now, with every earth pipe I bury, when I compare that with what I did learning from Don Croft or George Ritchell about underground bases and all these underground energy fields, portals, whatever, I'm thinking, when I hammer this into the ground and I create my grid, am I doing something so that whatever, like I think they're trying to mask a frequency so that maybe if the Phoenix event is real, it will throw off the Phoenix event and it will target the wrong things. I don't know if that's even true. I don't know if the event's even true. I can't be certain anymore about anything. But if that's true, it's dabbled in my mind that like I might be not just neutralizing the harmfulness of this tower, but opening up that web to again keep the natural flow moving so that if that event, which may be a natural occurrence, follows through in its natural form. So I know and that's a topic I know that like it's, you could watch Jason for years.
And he'll be the first to say the Phoenix event only hits specific areas and regions. It's not worldwide.
But even Jason says that the evolution of consciousness is the number one game that we're involved with. And the reason why I made my opening comments is that, when you are dealing with living technologies, it's not just to create an effect, it's to get attuned yourself so that you are evolving your consciousness in that way. So I would just say anybody that is, doing any of this, whether it's biogeometry, biogeometry you have to, because it's just built in the training. But if you're going to go out and start building orgone devices and using them, don't just stick them in the ground or use your power wand or whatever, really tune in, because in physical medicine, you learn in the body, there's a pulsation. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have anything to do with the heart. There's a larger overriding pulsation. And it's actually the same pulsation that is within the atmosphere around us. It's within our external ecology. And that pulsation, when it's synced up, within ourselves and within our biology and the outside, then that's when that coherence, that health happens. And that's where we start feeling more connected and part of the whole. Mm-hmm. So, when you're doing osteopathic work and you're, trying to restore normal motion into the cranium or to some organ system, what you do is you tune in, so that you know how to feel that at that very subtle level, and then you prevent that pulsation for a while till it builds up. And then you can feel when it just is about to explode, then you let it go, then you have a reset, and then normal function and movement is restored. And when you're describing the power wand, to me, it sounds, as above, so below. Everything works the same on every single level. That's just the way it is. So when you're using a power wand and you're actually deliberately maybe creating, a little bit of a pushback there, that's it. In fact, what you're doing is you're creating the normal impulses of pulsations there to build up so that you can create that reflow and restore proper function at that level. So you can only get to that level of appreciation when you start tuning in and understanding how things work and realize it's about you. It's not about stopping something outside of yourself. And I think that's the main takeaway that I have with all this. And it's a wonderful thing, because then that again is what makes us play the game on a whole different level that they can't prevent. There's no way they can stop that. And as far as the future and all these different speculations, I love listening to Jason and, all the different theories and everything, but I really don't care what's going to happen tomorrow. There's a reason why we play the game, because it's an adventure. We're here to have our own experience. And if we knew how it's going to end up, it wouldn't be any fun in the first place. So it's all about us.
I'm glad you said the word game, because a lot of folks before, if they haven't like gone out and gifted a tower, the main question they have is like, how am I supposed to do this? Because we're taught to doubt ourselves or think we're insignificant, monkeys hurling through space, whatever. So it's like, you think of it as a game. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be liberating. And I'm not just talking about orgonite gifting, but for myself, I like to equate it to a game, because it's like, it can be a challenge, but it's like you see what's going on with this is why I wanted to do this with the music and sky event. It's like I know there will be people. It's never going to be 100% of people all the time, but there's going to be a number of people that like they'll they'll crack the smile. They'll find something interesting and fun, and they'll be like, oh, that was cool. Like I don't want, it's almost, I mean, I don't want to say it's like a drug, but once you bust your first tower, I hear it all the time. People write all the time. Don't ever write to me, by the way, and say exactly where you did it, but or send pictures. Don't ever do that. But people write and they say, you know, this, like, wow, you were right. Like, this is so liberating. This is so fun. And I can't wait to do more, you know? And it's just, it should be. It's why I do what I do. My life, I mean, I could probably find something else to do with my time if I absolutely had to, but I found that this was my purpose, and I can't, it'd be so boring if I wasn't doing something to, you know, my philosophy is, what are you doing from the time you get here to the time you leave to leave this place in a better condition than how you found it? And as far as, I want to also point out, because there can be some heated opinions about with the power wand verbiage. You know, I've heard some people saying, "Oh, Mother Nature doesn't want us intervening. She wants us to leave her alone." And I told that to a shaman here, and she looked at me and she's like, "What the are they talking about?" Like, yes, it does. It needs us, and that's not to say go start trying. Like, don't go play God, but again, it's like we're opening up the ability, you know, Orgone gifting isn't like, I'm going to put a chembuster here and make it rain. No, you're going to put a chembuster there, and the natural conditions of what nature's supposed to do are the frequencies are going to free flow like they're supposed to, because you can put a chembuster in a flooded area and it's actually going to dry up. You put one in a dry area and it's going to start raining. So it's like nature knows what it needs to do. And that's that web, that overlay, that artificial overlay is trying to like damper that. And that's what we're opening back up. So it's like, we're not, you know, I'm not making it rain. I think also with a lot of the rain we're getting, I believe I live in an oasis, and there's a whole other conversation about the ancient tree stumps or potential melted buildings, especially here around Sedona. But I believe that we once lived in a time, or this time existed, in which there was proper vegetation and waterways to accommodate the amount of precipitation and water flow. And, you know, we've had water come back up out of the ground. I had a friend in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, I think he said maybe like 6 months ago, he's been out there. I have 3 people I know out there in Salt Lake City gifting, and 1 in Park City. And they said their friend at the water department mentioned, I think their water table went up 17 feet this year. And because they were changing verbiage on the law for drilling wells. And I was just like, well, why would the water be going up? And I'm like, well, I've heard all these stories about people building pyramids and water appearing from underground. And, you know, I've heard the Colorado River is absolutely booming. And I know I've gifted quite a stretch of it. I know several people who've gifted stretches from here and up through Colorado, like all the way through Colorado through, I mean, it's like the reservoirs are actually, I hear, are empty, and people are asking questions why, because the river is so booming. And I think that's, you know, something that needs to be addressed as well. Again, that's a whole other topic.
We're doing an entire chat on that the first night at Music and Sky around the Grand Fire with Russell Anderson and Cosmic Sojourner, who were on the show 2 weeks ago, about primary water and consciousness. And Russell will be the first to say, no, we don't need to be doing the deep drilling into the primary water. In fact, if we do the right job with the consciousness, you know, and healing the planet, the water will just start coming up. So that's essentially what we're talking about.
If people live anywhere near dry lakes, you know, just a quick gifting tip, we've walked out on dry lakes all over the place that are full now. And like I said, my friend, she over in Virginia, I think it was North Carolina, just one example of, you know, having a spring and I always tell people, if you live on or around water, put it around water, for the same reason they put those godforsaken towers on our water towers and around the dams and make those big beast hydroelectric power plants. They're doing something with the current of energy that's running through this realm. And so get it flipped back to what it's supposed to be. And I think we can bring that water to the surface for sure. So
Well, old structures, this gets into Tartarian stuff, that are remnants that we think are cathedrals and grand buildings that we, built a few hundred years ago that have been there forever. The one thing that's evident is they all had waterways around them in order to carry the current for their electrical devices. So it's no secret forever that water is the main conducting conduit, within our earths. And yeah. So, with that being said, we talked a little bit with Russell too. If you understand the whole alchemical precipitation of matter as we think of it, everything on the ground is basically frozen water. And, I made the comment that, a block of granite just takes a lot longer to thaw out than a cube of ice. But everything does come from that water element, 100%. So your comment that we are the water planet, no, we're the 100% a water planet. And the minerals and things that we think that rocks are composed of are a tiny, tiny fraction, as far as what comprises things in the first place.
Well, then that would answer the common question I get is, why would they want to turn off the water? Why would they want to shut off the rain? Why would they, because it is life. It is life. It's everything. And yeah, I don't know. There was a question I wanted to ask you actually about I started learning about ozone and how since 2020, there are a lot of major cities that, everyone thought that the air was just simply cleaner because people weren't driving to work. But there are a lot of studies now that the ozone levels have gone up so high, like 300% in the last few years. And I was learning about when with that high oxygen content, the air actually, like, we'll have more lightning. There will be a lot more, and I've heard about the age of air. I know we hear about the grand solar minimum and the possibility of magnetic pole shifts, and there's so many things. And then you've got the artificial stuff that's being induced too. So trying to make sense of, well, what is it exactly that's happening? But I have heard that we're moving into the age of air, where the free energy will no longer just be and it happens every so often, but it won't just be the uranium or plutonium or what the radioactive material that's in the soil that's been vilified that would power everything forever. But it's going to be coming from the air, and that they're no longer going to be able to cover it up. And that all of those old Tartaria buildings that we can't make sense of are actually some of them are going to come to life. And I find that interesting. When I heard that, I thought I had to ask you, because it made me think, my God, so what's going to happen with the 3,000 pyramids and chembusters out there? And because of that idea, you've got a cathedral energy generator, and you've got these other energy generators as well. And so I don't know, it's interesting. It's just interesting to think about it. That's another one of those topics, much like Jason's, that threw me for a loop, where I'm like, okay, how do I apply this and adjust what I'm thinking? Because I do not know the end all be all. So
well, ozone is, of course, created every time there's a lightning storm. That's why, you have that smell in the air. When I do medical ozone, you get that same smell. And I have heard that it is supposedly becoming more abundant. And the reason why lightning creates ozone, it's a purification process. The O3, has that effect, where the one oxygen breaks off and has a different kind of effect to purify, while it just creates more of an abundance of oxygen. That's why medical ozone, is very beneficial. But again, I go back to consciousness, your friend that says we shouldn't be tampering with such things. Well, mankind is the mediator between the lower three kingdoms of nature and the higher three kingdoms of divinity. Now, this gets kind of into 7-ray understanding and so forth, where you have these different ray forms that are responsible for giving all the attributes and characteristics to everything we see on the ground. But we are here to become conscious co-creators. And now that there is a consciousness shift, and just this little talk today where we're talking about using technologies that actually harness that and then become part of it. Unlike fake science where we make believe like we're not in room. It's like, no, we can't, we have to be part of it. We have to be conscious of it. And that is having a great, great effect in the atmosphere. And that is always going to have consequences there. It can't not, because every thought, every belief, everything that we do, the consciousness shifts where we start entertaining those higher levels of intelligence and knowledge. That has to create consequences at those levels. It just, there's no way around it, because all of those actions are electrical vectors that are then going to mirror out, on every level of reality and mate with other thought forms of similar type. And that is how the consciousness shift, reaches that 100th monkey theory. So yeah, is there going to be a rebuilding of our realm, a regenerative effect? Is there going to be more ozone production? There can't not be. So it's very easy to understand, but unfortunately, we haven't really been taught about how the things work. We're talking about things coming through in pulsations. We're talking about the wand and how that knowledge can allow you to tune into that level and actually use it. Well, Reich himself, it was all about the orgasm energy, the pulsation. He wasn't talking about a physical sexual act, just like Walter Russell isn't talking about sex per se when he's talking about we live in a sex-based universe. He understands the waveform mechanics that happen in these pulsing, forms as they emanate from us in the first place, and then create all of, our realm and everything that we experience in it. So anyway, kind of long-winded way of saying that's our job. And you better believe we're going to see some really cool things happening, even though they're trying to hypnotize us into the opposite. And I would say, as far as your orgone devices, that's just going to make them even more effective.
That I will say too, that first of all, that wasn't long-winded at all. That was awesome, because it is difficult to make a bridge for people. The question becomes not like when they're saying, how does this work? Why is this doing what it's doing? And it's like, well, in order to fully grasp that, which I'm still on the path to figure that out, because things keep changing, or more comes to light, really. It's like you have to want to understand the realm in which you live. And that's how that when people are looking at me like, what do you mean this is about consciousness? I'm like, it is. It's the energy that's passing through. It has to tap in or tap out somehow, and the effects of that through your DNA, or the thing with the ozone specifically. I heard recent, I was reading this thing. I saw a bunch of videos and then was looking into ozone and RNA expressing like it does something to alter the DNA. And I thought, okay, so I don't know a lot about this topic, but I know something's going on in the atmosphere. I know that there's something going on with the cycles. There's something going on with humans. There's something going on with something trying to be injected into the human body to do something to the DNA and the RNA that affects all these things. And I'm like, what could they like? So it's like you do that puzzle that never ends, but at least you start to notice the puzzle the picture on it does not match the box you were given at birth. And you're like, this is BS. And so, yeah, that's just where I'm going with that.
And isn't it funny circling back to the climate change hoax, the whole fear about the holes in the ozone that were supposed to be happening, right? I remember being so scared about that when I was a kid. That
was the whole point, Mike. Be scared. Be scared.
Yeah. And for those asking, or way earlier in the chat, like for those friends or family that are still in fear of that whole climate change. Well, I mean, climate change is real. Obviously, the climate is changing every day, but the man-made climate change hoax, the carbon credits, all that stuff. One way to just weed right through that, go right through the weeds there, is just Al Gore's predictions never come true. They always move the goalposts. They move the goalpost every year.
Every year.
Obama's buying coastal land, supposedly that's supposed to be under the ocean in 5 years. So all you have to do is just show the normies their own normie behavior happening, and how hypocritical the quote unquote wannabe elites are in terms of what they're actually doing versus what they're saying.
Absolutely. And the level of effort that they put into that, it's like, if something is so true, it doesn't require that much effort in order to show that it's true. And it's like, again, don't just look at what they're doing, look at the level of intention and the level of effort that they put into doing this nonsense, because it's nothing but the twilight zone. And yes, the climate, obviously, yes, the climate changes, and that's why people, when other things come to light, I've only in the last year learned about the term vapor canopy and to understand what that truly would mean. So it's like that, having to reevaluate, well, what is the operations of all this stuff? But we live in a world that something wants to control based solely on fear. It's about fear and not having enough, pitting things against each other, misery, human misery. And so I think the goal in this life is to actually get from start to finish and get past that, to where you're just like, this doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me. And then it doesn't get the power from you. You're no longer the battery for it.
Exactly. It's a self-serving apocalypse in that way, where the apocalypse just means change, so we can be the change, not them. I will say this on the vapor canopy thing, the kids and I, since we homeschool or unschool, or whatever you want to call it, we kind of do everything. We're going to do a science experiment. We're going to create our own vapor canopy aquarium or terrarium, and we're going to try to grow really large lizards.
Nice.
So that is going to be a project we're going to work on, Bear. I can't wait to kind of tap into your brain a little bit how we're going to do that. But Jason Brashears talks about how there was an experiment done in Texas. I forgot what university. I think it was like a Christian university or something, recently did an experiment where they created manufactured a vapor canopy and were able to grow extra large reptiles and stuff. So that's going to be
scary,
a fun
because the
project.
lizards around my place are already huge.
I did want to say too that, just in regards to the event, I really cannot say thank you enough to Sam and actually his friend Ryan as well, who we met. They came here, they stayed for a couple days, got to know him really well. And I wish I could have stayed longer, but when you see Sam at the event, like, give him a fist bump or what. I mean, I know people, I don't want to say his last name for the sake of his own privacy, if that's how, I don't know if that's his thing, but you'll know him when you see him. And
yeah, you can't miss him.
Yeah, it was great. And he had his own like contraptions and devices. And so it was just for him to help. It's a lot. And I'll have this posted on my website as well. I wanted to show, I was like, oh, what does, a quarter ton of orgonite look like? And had it spaced out in the house. I'm like, good God, I can't believe I just did that.
We were originally trying to make Sam's life easier, and we were going to have Larkin Rose, because he's kind of by you, because he's driving. He's renting a car and driving from his neck of the woods to Music and Sky. And we're like, we'll knock out two birds with one stone. And so then you informed us, this is like a quarter ton of orgonite. I don't think that's going to fit in his trunk.
Yeah, it was a little, I mean, yeah, it was bigger than I had anticipated. And at first, I didn't even think anything of it. I was telling my partner, I'm just like, oh yeah, I'll send them some stuff. And then that became a 2-month project. And also I want to say, just so people kind of like, when you know what to look for, in the same way I said, know what to look for in the climate talking point, the hoax stuff, and how to pinpoint it and educate other people on it, how it's untrue and why it's untrue. I want people to be familiar. There's I have other friends in Oregon who are helping to gift kind of simultaneously. I've been putting my hand in a lot of cookie jars, or whatever the phrase is, and have a friend running down the southern coast of California, because we know, just you hear things, you watch new videos, you get exposed to somebody else's perspective, whether it's like Alana Freeland, or I have too much in my head right now. I can't think of the second person I was thinking of, but going along the coastline and busting towers, burying earth pipes. So it's like we've been doing that, and moving, like doing some little surges in the southwestern part of the state and along the border. And my partner and I just went to Parker Dam in California and did a whole with actually some family friends, and had like 10 people and kids on jet skis all doing crap along the Colorado River and around the dams and everything. So there's a lot in tandem. And this particular event, or this thing I'm doing with the event going on, I am really expecting to see some more noticeable changes, where the things that will make people say, huh, because it was the first time I ever did something with busting a tower and said, huh. And here I am today. So it never ended. So anyway, yeah, just like little things to look for. We're really trying to proactively repair and enhance that section, because Arizona is doing I think we're doing pretty well. I know California needs a lot of help, especially Southern California. I've known of people in Southern California that gift, but I am a go big or go home person. I put a lot of stuff out. I make sure I never have to go back to the same place twice to gift it. And so that's my method. And I want to really I want to inspire other people who are like, wow, like there's something to this, and this is pretty cool. And so I'm like, fine.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. You mentioned fun. It's super important to have fun. That number one goal for me is have fun and do cool stuff and change the world for the better. So I'll be doing some extreme gifting. There are some towers up in the Siskiyou Mountains here they put up. It's ridiculous. So I'm going to have to backpack up into them, do an overnight to get up to those, to bust those, but that's going to be really fun figuring out how to do that. I did post that gifting I did with my son Mateo on the coast here to the event channel and to Alfa Vedic last spring, and that took off, and that was fun, like going into the wilderness and busting towers and gifting or wherever you make it an adventure. It's like there's a lot of fun. So
yeah,
wow.
And you might even get some feedback from Squatch when you're up there.
Yes.
Hey, Mike, because I know I'm down to the wire here. I will just say specifically for people watching this who are going to the event, for anything that might be confusing or questions they'd have, I've done the legwork, but they're going to get a packet. The packet's going to have the earth pipe and the hockey puck in it. And then I've got obviously printed information in there. It looks like a lot of text only because one side is all about like, what exactly is this stuff if I don't want to open a device to read it on my website. But I put a little mark of the devil here. I put a little QR code there at the bottom so that people can basically just scan it and just circle the part that says, this is where you come in. So when you open up your packet at the event and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. It's like, it's very brief. It's just right there. And it's like, it just kind of says, there's a rhyme and a reason. Here's that reason. Here's how you can help and how to have fun with it.
Amazing. Great work, dude. I'm so
Mitch,
excited.
Amazing. There's a couple people just still wondering where they get info and everything. So if you wouldn't mind repeating your website.
Absolutely.
And all the stuff is on there. So go for it. And Mitch, by the way, thanks. You've certainly inspired us here and myself, especially, I've known about this technology for a long time, but because of your efforts, I'm actually out there starting to do it myself. So thank you. Great service you're doing.
Absolutely. It is a treat. I really have to say it is such a treat to talk to you guys. So this is awesome. So people can find me on my website. It is theorgonedonor.com, and that's Orgone, not organ. So it's ORGONEDONOR.com. I definitely recommend, check out my website, check out my, I have a project called Restoring the Desert. That is essentially the bread and butter of everything I'm doing in terms of transforming Arizona. And then also check out my blog. I will say today, because I was busy getting I had a few obligations until this morning that included the music and sky. And so one of those pages, it might say it's like under construction today, because I got a lot of content I'm actually basically going up there to do after we're off here. So visit my website. I am on Instagram. If you ever friend me or follow me on Instagram, I verify everybody. Like if you're not a human, I will not approve it. It's just easier that way for me. So send me a message if you want a quick response to get approved, or make sure there's some identifiable factor on there. And then if you want to support my work, which would be awesome, I want to be transparent so people know everything I ever gift comes out of my pocket. It always has, and it always will. And yes, it is incredibly expensive. I have dedicated my life savings to this. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I do want to be honest about that. With that said, I want to thank 3 people just because I know they're watching. So to Melanie, Marla, and Allison, who I think some might be going to the event. I want to say thank you because I was able to come up with about half of the cost of this thing, which is what motivated me enough to put up the other half and do it, because it's not cheap. So if you want to support my work, that would be amazing. One of the best ways to do that is go online to my shop. If anything is out, I restock on Fridays because I am a one-man show. So if whatever's not up there today, it'll be back to itself tomorrow morning. But yeah, check some things out, get them for your home, and yeah.
Do you have a donation link too, somewhere people can just donate to you?
If people are interested in that, so we know that there are certain rules and things. I have to be very careful because I am harassed enough as it is. So if anybody's ever interested on that account, send me a message and let me know. Every once in a while, someone will send me a gallon of resin, and once in a while, somebody nice will come out of the woodwork and show some support. But really, if you get something from the shop for your home, that's fantastic. And the only reason I don't want to say it on here, why I don't use payment apps for certain things, because there's a weave we all have to go through in this matrix.
We need to get your website up on Cordal and start doing commerce through that.
Yes,
there are people doing commerce through it. Like I mentioned, I bought colloidal silver from a gentleman through it with Quart. And once we launch the Q apps, Alfa Vedic will be selling stuff on there because they'll have full e-commerce on there in the private. It's fully in the private, and then you can transfer your Quart to Pirate Chain, to R, and then or to Bitcoin or whatever, and you can then transfer it to fiat if you want. But the whole point is we'll have a full marketplace of awake people in there, like Alfa Vedic, like you, like EMF Rocks, like people's farms, lots of farms in there. So you'll be able to buy food, medicine. We're even working on having the ability to finance homes through it and all this stuff. So you'll be able to work completely in the private. So would love to talk to you about that. And then at Music and Sky, we will have a donation jar specifically for you, as well as a donation link if we have to create it ourselves. And then those funds will make it back to you as well. So just know we are doing that.
Well, I am over the moon if it's a physical object, because that's all. All right. I will just simply say that's awesome. And I appreciate anything anyone's willing to do. The best thing is like that, just when people care and they want to do something, they want to take an active role. And they can also see on my website, I've got the tutorials, how to build some very in-depth things, videos on how to make earth pipes, a whole smorgasbord, so that, it's tailored for all any part of the spectrum you're on and how you want to be involved. So,
and when you make it yourself, you inject your consciousness, your intention into it. So, that is just as important as the ingredients themselves, I would say. And as Bear always says, that it's not the practitioner, it's the practitioner himself, not necessarily the modality. It's the intention, the consciousness behind it. So
absolutely
super important. Mitch, thanks so much, man. You've been such a inspiration to us, and we're so happy that we were able to connect with you last year and continue this relationship. And thanks so much for all your gifting out to the world and to Music and Sky. You're really doing God's work, and we are blessed to know you.
Thank you, guys. Absolutely. All the best to you and to everybody watching.
Hey guys,
awesome.
if you enjoyed this conversation, please give us a thumbs up, share with your friends and family. That really helps us get this information out. And definitely go to alfavedic.com and get your teas and all your good stuff through there. Go to Mitch's website to get your hands on some lovely orgonite, or follow his different recipes to make your own. And hopefully we'll be seeing you at Music and Sky next week. Or if not, check out The Way Forward this weekend too. That is an online summit. Anybody can join for free. alfavedic.com/The Way Forward. Thanks, guys. And we're actually taking next week off because I'll be on the road. However, Bear is going to be doing a couple shows. Bear, I'll email you after this, getting you with Pat Life. And there's a couple other folks that want to. Long list of people wanting to interview the great Dr. Bear Lando.
I'm way behind on my emails. I gotta get on everyone's schedule. So apologies. I will get to everybody. And Mike, when you get back, we've got some cool stuff happening. We've got Doria Kareem from Biogeometry International. We've got a few other surprises.
George Wiseman.
That are going to be way cool.
George Wiseman.
Oh yeah,
coming
George
on,
Wiseman.
talk about Brown's gas. Jason from Archaics, where I'm talking about him about coming back in November to do a Q&A. So Mitch, we probably want to give us any questions you have for Jason. That dude is just a compendium of knowledge. All of his information, by the way, comes from just researching books. The dude does not watch YouTube or anything. All his information comes from primary sources. Take that as you will. But anyways, yeah, lots of great guests coming, and we'll just keep the content coming your way. And with the new content platform, especially, very excited about that. And yeah, that's all I got, guys. So hey, get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something. Mother Nature's our best teacher. Go show her some love and throw an organite earth pipe in there while you're at it. Love you guys. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Cheers.